I write you this letter to tell you about a recent discovery I've made. Together with Ermazek, we stumbled upon this cave where a vile ritual has taken place against the ontological laws of Ephraim. I cannot state where said cave resides, for that knowledge would bring you one step closer to Sabiot. My dear Meliadov, I will return to the ossuary soon. Oh, and yet again, thank you for everything you've done, assisting me in creating my magnum opus, the Sanguine Simulacrum. Signed, Alexander. Humanity, a subject I touched on several times in my previous video. Being as intertwined with hope as it is yet another concept that is as fragile as an already broken mirror. And thus, I pose you the question, what does it truly mean to be human? One might conclude that it is the very act of being alive. And you wouldn't be wrong, but I fear that humanity itself asks for more of a person than simply being. For my understanding of it is that you have to abide by your nature and nurture, but as I hypothesize, I immediately find myself disagreeing. So I again truly ask myself the aforementioned question. Part 1. The Marrow of Actuality. In Rezengar may lay a key that can open the door to a profound understanding of our existence. Following Ephraim's laws of being, every living creature has 5 essences: a Ka, a Ka, a Ba, an Up, and a Sekem. These terms somewhat overlap with the old Egyptian methods and philosophies of being, namely Ka, Ba, Ip, Ren, Shut, Ket, and Ak. However, in Rezengar, the fragments mean this: Ka, the mortal shell, a corpse; Ka, ego, reason, and abstract thought; Ba, emotion, the subconscious; Ab, the moral compass; Sekem, the soul. There is also a version of Ren, one's true name, in Rezengar. However, it doesn't share that namesake, but that is for another video. Now that we are aware of the foundation of our being, can we haphazardly conclude that this is what it means to be human? Again, not false, yet not quite the answer I feel most of us are subconsciously or even proactively yearning for. I've spoken briefly about my character, Alexander, in the previous video. However, I surmise that right now is the perfect opportunity. For Alexander is most aware of how the 5 essences can truly dehumanize you. Alexander has always been a dangerously intellectual person since his infancy. His research and examinations have always been an ostentatious proclamation to reality itself, for he always felt the obligation to prove himself, not to others, but to the very etheric dust that has rooted itself as yet another element. Eventually, joining Cultus Mortis, clearly a cult about death, however, not evil. But most simple villagers do suspect or even firmly shout out to the heavens above as such. Here, after experimenting with blood for more than 100 years, his hair began to naturally shift hue from a midnight black to a sanguine crimson. He was innovating hemocraft spells and eventually leading him to create something so pristine, so divine, that it became his very downfall. Lazarus needs the Sanguine Simulacrum. Part 2. The nucleus of man. O vile Lazarus, why dost thou yearn for ruination? An excruciating pain washes over you. Tied to a table, jet black shades dance surrounding your peripheral vision. Again and again and again, you lie there helpless, yet determined beyond all belief. You must never give Lazarus access to your cortex, let alone the very memories you hold so dearly. The steel pin goes in again and again and again. Orange piercing motes of light that you can only comprehend as eyes trying to peer into your 5 essences. He's breaking you apart. You hate him. You feel an inconceivable amount of wrath to this monster in front of you. You must kill him. You must. Then blank. Nothingness. You wake up in a small valley filled with a green sea of foliage. Close to your right, castle walls surround the city. Where are you? Who are you? You don't remember. Just that your head is bleeding and so is your nose. And name? You stammer. Ich heiße... Heiße? Yeah, that has to be it. And thus, Heiße was born. Someone who wasn't meant to be born. Someone who is merely here to protect. But how can you protect when you don't even know your own humanity? And this is where I took inspiration from Tokyo Ghoul, a beautiful written and illustrated work of modern literature. However, I want to look even deeper. The works that inspired this, and not long ago, reshaped my fundamental understanding of differences in philosophy. The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. On my first read-through, I was honestly in awe. Aware of the premise that I had already filled in my reactions to such a repulsive and grotesque scenario. A very crude summary of the plot is that our main character transforms into a giant insect. I thought our protagonist would be terrified of himself and would feel a tidal wave of terror, but he is focused on not being late for work. This completely stunned me as a reader. From my interpretations, it is not until after his family confronts him that he truly realizes what he has become and begins his road of despair, where everything suddenly collapses on him. I believe Kafka always left a lot to the interpretation of the reader, and therefore mine may vastly differ from yours. When Heiße first awoke, Alexander was still absent. Through various trials, he finally came to and realized he was not who he was anymore. Not only had a completely new, more emotional identity manifested, but Alexander could already feel that Heiße had taken this from him, quickly leading Alexander to surmise that Heiße was indeed a self-defense mechanism to withstand the brutality that is lobotomy, yet also that it started to act like a parasite. To almost nihil measures did Alexander's emotions get siphoned from him and strengthened when Heiße was at the forefront of the Ka. A resentment started to build, but it was not until much later that a realization burst through like a geyser cracks through the ground. That same realization that was described in the Metamorphosis. Not until after he was confronted with what he had become did he realize how truly ugly he became. For how can you show so much discontent to a version of you that has the ability to love others to the fullest? Part 3. No longer humanesque. You might be wondering about the title of this video. What do I truly mean? For that, we need to collect ourselves and everything discussed prior. I stated earlier that Alexander had done research to everything sanguine to the best of his abilities for over 100 years. This is because Cultus Mortis has teachings that with enough willpower, you can extend your lifespan. Can you truly call someone who is 139 years old but looks like an anorexic 28-year-old still fully human? Yet the cause is to achieve an equilibrium in the cycle of existence. Cultus Mortis' founder, Zalakai, his teachings. It is for the betterment of humanity, yet Cultus Mortis has become one of the most discarded factions in Rezengar by its people. Thus someone who puts themselves out of the cycle, promotes the very cultivation of balance, truly have the right to take this action. It is a must that you shed your standardized mortality, and thus with it, a part of your humanity. This leads me to focus on the front load of the title, No Longer Human, a novel written by Osamu Dazai, a famous, perhaps even infamous writer that, in my humble opinion, is a genius at writing internal decay of the mind. In this work, we follow the nature and nurture of our lead character. Even as a young child, everything was done with a mask on, to exclaim a theatrical play of assimilation, everything for approval and acceptance. But not because it felt good, no, because our protagonist feels it is the right approach to be able to function in a human society, speaking as if from that point he already was something beyond or below human, followed by a life of misfortune and all manner of horrible addictions and circumstances that I truly do not wish upon another. This creature looks physically hideous, has various forms of sins branded on its back, and carries with it emotions that can only be described as a bundle of malformed euphoria, twisted into something of the purest forms of melancholy that I have ever witnessed, described as someone or something that has suffered for 139 years but only ends up being 27. Now, this isn't exactly accurate to the story we follow with Alexander. However, similarities can be found. Alexander, much later in the story, has completely lost emotions, besides those for Meliadov, his partner. The reason being is simple. Heise is a created identity. Were you to call him a construct or homunculus, not many could rationally disagree. This is precisely where the problem lies. Heise wants to live, wants to feel, wants to experience. Whereas Alexander has the priority of halting Lazarus, Heise simply wants to be allowed to live and exist. For someone so caring and emotionally rich, it is an almost insultingly selfish goal, but it is so primal. Could you really deny him the very basics of humanity? So there are two people in one body, both having different reasons to live and act. One grasping and shielding the very last embers of what made him him. The other absorbs that very flame, but for a goal so simple and innocent. What can you even do? Is this constant accepted struggle truly something a human goes through? You are simultaneously losing everything and gaining everything. So I ask a final time, what does it truly mean to be human? I fear a concrete answer will evade us for an excruciatingly long time. But with some of the new insights, we can perhaps hypothesize this. The very fundament is to exist, to be, to conform to Ephraim's laws, to have the 5 essences intact. Besides that, it is to experience the life that has been granted, be it warm like the sun or a frigid wasteland. If you endure, you will stay intact. To have love for others and permit them to feel hope is the last step. Conflicted as I still am, I'm confident these 3 points carry enough weight to make a statement where Alexander is enduring the existence Heise is trying to obtain, each only meeting one of the criteria. Thus, I must regretfully admit my character Alexander is no longer human-esque.